chained and mocked until one woman claimed him as her own. The desert wind carried whispers of mockery across the sandy expanse, where two figures sat beside a crackling fire. Marcus, a warrior whose massive frame bore the intricate tattoos of countless battles, stared into the flames with eyes that had seen too much. Beside him, Alina drew her simple dress closer as the evening air grew cool. "They call you a monster," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence they had shared for days now. Marcus didn't flinch at her words. His weathered hands, scarred from years of combat, remained steady as he fed another piece of dried wood to the fire. "Is that what you see when you look at me?" Elena studied his profile in the firelight. The thick beard couldn't hide the gentleness in his expression, nor could his imposing size mask the careful way he moved around her, always conscious not to frighten her with his presence. "No," she said simply. "I see a man who makes sure I eat before he does. I see someone who gives me the warmer side of the fire every night." The flames danced higher, casting shifting shadows across the desert landscape. In the distance, coyotes called to each other across the vast emptiness. Marcus had been wandering these lands for months, ever since he'd escaped the chains that had bound him in the town square. The memory still burned in his mind like a brand. "Tell me about the chains," Alina said, as if reading his thoughts. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I was captured after a raid went wrong. My men were killed, and I was taken as a prize. They wanted to make an example of me." His jaw tightened. "They chained me in the center of town like an animal. For sport." Elena's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She had heard the stories before she'd encountered him in the wilderness. Stories of the giant warrior who had been paraded through settlements, jeered at by crowds, pelted with stones and refuse. A cautionary tale about the fate of those who dared to challenge the established order. "How long?" she asked. 3 months. The words came out heavy, weighted with humiliation and rage. 3 months of being their entertainment. Children would dare each other to get close enough to poke me with sticks. Women would spit at my feet. Men would boast about what they'd do if they ever faced me in fair combat. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling up into the star-filled sky. Marcus continued, his voice growing steadier. But there was one day, a day when everything changed. Alina leaned forward slightly, encouraging him to continue. "A woman came to the square. She was different from the others. She didn't come to gawk or to throw things. She just stood there, watching, studying me." Marcus glanced at Alina, a ghost of a smile crossing his features. She had these remarkable eyes, dark and intelligent, fearless. What did she do? At first, nothing. She just stood there while the crowd grew ugly around her. Someone threw a rock that caught me on the temple, and I started bleeding. The crowd cheered. Marcus touched the small scar that still marked the spot. But she didn't cheer. She stepped forward. The memory played out in Marcus's mind like a vivid dream. He could still see her clearly, the way she'd moved through the hostile crowd with quiet determination. She'd been small in stature, but her presence had commanded attention. "She walked right up to me," Marcus continued, ignored all the shouting and the threats from the crowd. "She looked me in the eyes and said, 'What's your name?'" Alina felt her breath catch. Such a simple question, but she understood its power. In that moment of dehumanization, someone had asked for his identity, had seen him as a person worthy of a name. "I told her Marcus," and she nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she turned to the crowd and said, "This is Marcus. He's coming with me." The flames reflected in Marcus's eyes as he remembered. The crowd went wild. They screamed that I was dangerous, that I was property of the town, that she had no right. But she just stood there, calm as still water, and said, "He's mine now. I claim him." Elena's pulse quickened. She recognized the significance of those words. In the old customs, still honored in some places, a person could claim responsibility for a prisoner. It was an ancient right, rarely invoked, but legally binding when properly declared before witnesses. The sheriff tried to argue. Marcus went on, said I was too dangerous, too valuable as an example, but she had the law on her side. She'd spoken the ritual words in front of the whole town. I was hers to command, her responsibility to control, and she just ... freed you. Marcus shook his head slowly, not immediately. She paid my debts to the town, gave them enough gold to replace what my men had taken in the raid, plus compensation for their trouble. Then she unlocked the chains herself. His voice grew soft, with wonder. Her hands were so small, but she wasn't afraid to touch me. Even when I was filthy and bleeding and probably looked more beast than man, the desert night enveloped them in its peaceful silence. Alina watched Marcus's face, seeing The way the memory transformed him, the hardness around his eyes softened, and for a moment she glimpsed the man he might have been before war and captivity had marked him. Where is she now? Elena asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Marcus turned to look at her fully, and in the firelight, Elena saw something she hadn't noticed before, a small scar on his temple, the same scar he'd mentioned in his story. Understanding dawned on her like the rising sun. You're her, he said simply. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The memories came flooding back now that the barriers between them had fallen. She remembered that day in the town square, remembered the way her heart had broken at the sight of this proud warrior reduced to public spectacle. She remembered the fierce protectiveness that had surged through her, the absolute certainty that she couldn't walk away and leave him to such degradation. You claimed me, Marcus continued, his voice full of quiet reverence. When everyone else saw a monster, you saw a man. When the whole world wanted to humiliate me, you gave me back my dignity. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. The past months of traveling together, of quiet conversations around evening fires, of growing closeness that felt both new and ancient, it all made sense now. They had been drawn together by something deeper than mere attraction, I thought. You might not remember, she whispered. You were so hurt, so angry, I wasn't sure. How could I forget the woman who saved my life? Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and gently touched her face. Not just from the chains, Elena. You saved me from becoming the monster they wanted me to be. Elena leaned into his touch, feeling the calloused warmth of his palm against her skin. And you, she asked. What do you see when you look at me? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing the path of her tears. I see the bravest person I've ever known. I see someone who looked at a broken, dangerous man and chose to see his humanity. I see the woman who claimed me when I had nothing left to offer but my loyalty. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows across the sand. Above them, the vast desert sky stretched endlessly, filled with more stars than either of them could count. You have more to offer than loyalty, Elena said softly. What do you see? Elena smiled, the expression transforming her face in the firelight. I see a man who's been gentle with me every day since we started traveling together. I see someone who shares his food, his warmth, his protection, without ever asking for anything in return. I see a heart that's capable of great love, if someone is brave enough to claim it. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of bonds he hadn't even realized he still carried. And are you, he asked quietly, brave enough? Elena's answer came not in words, but in the way she closed the distance between them, her small hands framing his bearded face. When she kissed him, it was soft and sure, a claiming that went deeper than ancient laws or public declarations. When they broke apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I was lost for so long, he murmured, lost in anger and pain and the need for revenge, but you found me. No, Elena whispered back. We found each other. The desert wind picked up, scattering sparks from their fire across the sand like fallen stars. Tomorrow they would continue their journey, but tonight they sat together under the vast sky. Two souls who had claimed each other in the truest sense of the word. In the distance, the coyotes sang their ancient songs, and the desert held them safe in its endless embrace. Marcus and Elena had both been searching for something, he for redemption, she for purpose, and in each other, they had found not just what they sought, but something far more precious. They had found home.